All right, so this is a meeting for your second semester field experience. And the goal is that you are working toward 200 hours by the end of this semester. So we're at the midpoint now, week 8. So you have 8 weeks left. We'll check in again at the end of this semester, but this is just kind of to check in and see how you guys are feeling. So what I'd like for you to do is down at the bottom of your screen where the toolbar pops up, there's a button that says reactions. So I want you to just throw up a reaction of like thumbs up. I'm in a good place working towards 200 hours. Celebration, maybe I've got my hours, I'm close, I'm really right there. Or maybe the oh no face, like not even really close, not sure I'm gonna make 200 hours.
Where is this toolbar?
Yep, if you scroll down, like just like when you go to exit the meeting, down in the right-hand corner, to the left of that, there is a button with a smiley face that says reactions.
I don't have that.
Are you, I wonder, some devices may not have it. Okay.
I'm on a Chromebook.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm on a Chromebook too, and it doesn't have it.
Okay, that's all right. So several of you put up your either thumbs up or a celebration. For those of you that couldn't, just let's do a fist to 5. So if you are, and you can type it in the chat, you can hold up your hands in the screen, whatever you want to do. Fist meaning like, I don't really have a whole lot of hours at all. Or 5 meaning I am at or pretty close to 200 hours now, so I know I'll be okay by the end of the term. How are you guys feeling? Okay. I don't see any 1s or 0s, so that's good. Some 2s, 3s, 4s, okay. All right. So we will talk through a little bit of that first. So I think most of our time will probably be on the performance assessment. Yeah, that's a good point too, working during the summer, working on the hours over the summer. So if we can take like 10 minutes and just check in on your hours, what questions do you have? Or maybe even if you guys have found something that has accumulated quite a few hours, that is something that might be available to others in another district. We'll go around the room really quick, and you can just say, I've really kind of been able to find some things that have added up okay, or ask a question, or you can pass if you don't have a question. So I'm just gonna go in the order that I see on my screen. So Hannah Cook, you are up first. How are you feeling on your hours?
I feel like they're coming right along. I'm finding little bits here and there. I haven't found any big chunk of anything really, but I feel like I'm finding a lot of little things that are adding up. I feel pretty good about it.
And feeling good about your log of hours and keeping that up to date and assigning the domains as you go?
Yeah, I went through and put little highlighters on things that I was going to use later. So as I go through, I just kind of grab that and stick it over. So that has worked really well for me. I felt confident in that.
Good deal. So we'll touch on this at the end, but for everyone who's on here and who listens later on the replay, your log of hours will be due in week 16 to me. So it can look any way. You can have it on, a Word table, an Excel spreadsheet, however you want to have it. You can use the one that's in the syllabus, but you will have to have your log of hours turned into me in week 16, and it will need to have your event or your activity, your hours, and the domain that it connects to, and a brief description, just like the template in the syllabus has on it. So if you have a tip or a trick that's been working for you and you want to share for the good of the group, that you guys that I've had in the first round, some of you I'm just having now in the second semester, but those of you that I've had in the first round, some of you had some pretty creative ways of keeping your hours tracked and coded. So always good to share those. Diana, how are you doing with your hours?
Like Hannah said, lots of little things. I'm having trouble getting anything. It's just hard to feel like it's going to add up to enough when it's just little stuff. So that's why I'm concerned. I haven't actually gone through and done the math recently to see where I'm at. It just doesn't feel like I'm making as much progress as I should be. It's hard with COVID because I can't do things in other buildings and they won't let me mix into other classrooms. And so it's really hard with our restrictions.
Right. One of the things also, like I mentioned, when you guys start working on your performance assessment, instructional problem and intervention plan, that will take in some hours. Also remember that you have in the syllabus some of the courses that you are taking or are going to take also have hours built into those for some of the work that you're doing.
Yeah,
So,
this visionary leadership class that we're in right now is supposed to have some built into it. Are we talking about like our research and our paper and stuff like that? Is there a specific kind of hours that we're supposed to be taking out of that?
I think
In the syllabus, underneath the projects and assignments, it'll say all these projects are available to use for hours. And I think it just says collect the amount of hours you use per assignment and use that for your database.
Okay.
Musa, is that in the class syllabus, not in the field experience syllabus? Is that right?
Yeah, and the visionary leadership syllabus.
Okay. Perfect.
And so all of those are going to count as visionary hours, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Great questions. Thank you. Musa, how are you doing on your hours?
I'm good. I hit the 200 mark. The only problem I'm having is getting into high schools. A lot of them are saying like we don't want anyone in, especially if you're a teacher and have all the students, and then you could potentially bring something. But I've been pretty busy at my middle school, so I'm doing good.
Great. Great. Hopefully by the time you guys get into your third semester, you'll be able to get into that minor area a little easier than this year. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that's what happens. Chelsea, how are you feeling on your hours?
Doing pretty good. I'm lucky that I get to count a lot of my IEP meetings, and we just had a big interview process for our new special ed coordinator. So I'm getting a lot of hours from that as well. I am having a more difficult time getting my high school hours than I am at elementary, but I'm doing pretty good. So
good deal. Brandy, how about you?
I'm doing okay. I've been fortunate enough to be invited to district level meetings and building level meetings. We're also going to have another intern and myself do all of the interviews for summer school. So
Great.
I mean, I'm an applicant, so I don't know how that's going to work out. But, at least I think we'll be okay.
Good. That'll be a great experience. Patricia, I know you've got a lot of things going on. How are you feeling on your hours?
I'm gonna bank on a lot of my hours when I start the new job because I'm gonna get it over the summer. So I'm not worried that I'm not at that 200 level yet. But I did have a question. We just have to cover the domains, right? Not like the little decimals within them.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
you just have to have the overall domain, the hours for each overall domain.
And then is there any difference between the suggested activities versus the supplemental activities? They can be counted the same? Okay.
Yeah, I think the way that came out originally, the suggested activities were like the more desirable, like they'll look good on your resume kind of scenarios, and things that might get more bang for your buck. And then as the field experiences went on, they were adding more things that you guys could do. So they just stuck them in that kind of supplementary space. So,
Okay.
but it's
Okay.
not that one is required and one is not, and you know how you code them, they can all fall in the same place.
Okay, and then since I will be in a K-12 building, I can count all three levels as far as like I'm secondary and then my 75 hours for my elementary,
Right, you'll just
right?
need, yes, you'll just need to specify which events are for which level.
Okay.
Great questions. All right, let's see. Arla, or Greg tells me I have to call you Arla Joe.
Either or. I think I'm doing okay, I think. I haven't made it to the high school yet. But so how many hours, like for that to be our secondary, do we need to have of each?
Of, you meaning your minor and your major?
I don't know. I'm really confused now.
No, that's okay.
So,
So,
like, I knew we were supposed to have hours for the different levels. So if I only did it in elementary, then it would only be for elementary, right? Or is that not how it works?
well, right, the certification is for K-12 building leadership. So you have to have, I'm double checking to see because I don't want to tell you wrong, but you have to have 200 hours in your major area and
Okay.
200 hours in your major area, 50 hours in your minor area, and then 50 hours that you can kind of float between whichever one you need to.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I don't feel like I knew like any of this out the get-go. So I'm learning a lot today.
That's okay. If you have more questions after this, just let me know.
Oh, I probably will. I think I'll be okay because we are going to be hiring like 3 or 4 new teachers, I think. So I'm hoping to sit in on those interviews, and then we've been having our weekly grade level meetings and then board meetings and all those. So I
Good.
should be okay.
Okay. Also, guys, remember that you have a minimum number of hours per domain that you need to be getting. And then within that, or just kind of in general, each activity that you do can only count for 10 hours at most. So again, I know we say this every time, but usually like supervision is one that can rack up hours real quick. But you only are able to have 10 hours per activity. So if you are supervising 10 hours in the lunchroom, then that's where your 10 hours comes in. If you're supervising, 5 hours at the bus, 5 hours in the lunchroom, that still adds up to 10 hours. So for everyone who's working, make sure that for each activity that you have, you're not using more than 10 hours, unless you can kind of divide that activity, parts of that activity, into different domains. Sometimes on some of your bigger, like especially district level type things, you might be able to take pieces and put them in different domains. Okay, Jeff, you're next on my screen. How are your hours going?
Mine is going pretty good. I don't know how many hours I've got now, but it was well over 100 last time I checked.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fairly fortunate. I'm the bus transportation director at the school where I work, so I've got a lot of opportunities for elementary, high school, lots of discipline, lots of COVID situations, lots of different things that we've had to go through this school year. And so that's helped me quite a bit to get some hours. So, and plus with special ed, I have IEPs and things like that. So I'm pretty fortunate. I have lots of areas to get those hours and doing pretty good.
Good, great, good deal. Alex, how are you feeling?
Okay, I got 130 to 140 right now. I'm primarily at the elementary school, but I want to step out into the secondary with COVID and everything. It's very hard to leave. So, but I'm thinking that I might be okay to say, hey, you can go shadow for the day or go help this for the day, or I don't know. I do a lot of coaching as well, and I do just different things. So gonna figure out how to get them all done and keep on keeping on. So
Yeah, it's a little like everybody's kind of at this middle place where we're kind of halfway through now. So there's a little bit of panic about, am I going to get there? But a reassurance that you will get there. We will figure out a way to get you there. So Cecil, how about you and your hours?
My hours are going fine.
Okay, good.
I did have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So with the whole 10-hour rule,
Mm-hmm,
so if I've substituted for my assistant principal,
mm-hmm.
could I, and let's say it's a 7-hour workday and I've subbed for him twice.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have to divvy up those hours to say I can't just say I've done 7 hours of, substituting for the principal. So would I have to say like an hour was spent with student conferencing, an hour was spent with discussing attendance with the attendance secretary, an hour, do I have to do that? Or can I lump that all to say substituted for principal?
I think you could keep it all together as a chunk of time. I think it would be more beneficial to find the bits and pieces within those days that might fit into a different domain. And then if there are other things like within that 7 hours, if there are 3 hours that don't really fit a domain because it's just kind of whatever it might be, then just leave that, these 3 hours together as one chunk of that time. But then if you can pull out those experiences that might fit under different domains, I would recommend to do that just in case you get into next semester and you feel like you're short hours in some of those domains.
Okay. And then I have a student from one of our feeder high schools who works with my students for tutoring purposes and things like that. If I've sat down with that student and we planned out over the course of an hour how they were going to work with students in our kind of plan, can I count that as high school hours? Or do I have to count that as middle school hours? Because it is a high school student, but we are in a middle school building.
Well, so it's going to be elementary, K-8. Well,
Right. Yeah. K-8 for middle school.
Okay.
And so I know that we're in the primary strand. And so the kid's a high school, he's a senior in high school. And so
if it's 4 in elementary or elementary certification grade span, then it would count for the elementary.
So collaborating with that high school senior does not count toward the high school, because that's my minor strand.
I could be convinced depending on how you write that up. Like if you're coordinating with the high school teacher who is a part of that partnership to create the expectations for what the students do in that situation, then I could see that leaning more in the high school end because you're collaborating with faculty and staff at the high school level for this purpose. If you're just working with that student for the purposes of the elementary, I could see that probably being more elementary.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask a question? Because I was under the impression that 7th and 8th grade counts as secondary.
Let me double check.
That's what my mentor teacher or mentor advisor had told me. And then when I look on DESE and stuff like that for funding and different things like that, they count 7th and 8th grade as secondary.
As middle. I think you're right, but let me make sure, especially since they changed the certification to K-12. I want to make sure that
yeah, because I mean, I teach 7th and 8th grade, and that's where like a lot of my supervision and stuff like that has come from. But I'm in a pre-K through 8th grade building.
Right. Okay. I see what you're saying.
So if I'm going to have to go all the way to the high school to get any secondary hours, I'm going to really struggle.
Yeah, I want to say it's K-6, but I'll let you guys know for sure. I'll look and see for sure. let's see.
If
Some
that's
of
the
you-
case, what do we do if we work in a middle school building that's just 6 through 8? Because
you could, just for each activity, you would just kind of figure out where it would fall. And then if it spans the whole building, you can, I would say, just choose which one you want to put it in.
okay.
That can
So-
fall into some of those, like that 50 hours that kind of flex hours, that could fall into there, that it could just be for either one.
But if that is the case, if 7th and 8th does fall in secondary, then I would not have to visit the high school as much since I work in a 6 through 8 building. I can count that as either or, whichever way it fits.
Right.
it's-
You could count your time with 7, 8 as secondary.
Oh, thank you, Diana. Thank you for clarifying that one. That makes my life so much easier.
Yeah, I will let you guys know before we end the call. I sent a message to the coordinator of the program just to make sure, and then I'll let you know. All right, I apologize. Your squares have moved around and it's kind of shuffled a little bit. So let's see. Tana, how are you doing? Any questions?
I've got 107 hours, and I talked to my principal earlier this week, and it's just been crazy busy, and it probably will be crazy busy until the end of the school year. So I plan on getting a lot of my hours in the summer, because she said I could basically get however many I wanted, because she's going to have me like check book orders or, do stuff like that. So I plan on getting a lot of mine this summer.
Okay, good deal. Yeah, hopefully that'll be the case with everybody being able to knock some out over the summer hours, since administrators are still working over the summer and surely they'll need help. Tiffany, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I have around 150, and that would definitely help me out too if we get that clarified on the 7th and 8th, because I'm a K through 8 building as well. So I had a question too, then I guess that kind of depends on whether 8th grade counts as high school or not. But so next week we have the local high school. I've arranged for their counselors to come and talk to our 8th graders. Could that meeting count as a high school?
Collaboration?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, just look in on the domains in the syllabus when it defines what those domains are and kind of what goes in that. If you're working with the higher levels or whichever level, if you're working with them on collaboration or programming or whatever it might be, experiences, events, then I look at it as who you're working with. And so, I guess it could, Dr. Miller could be convinced either way when she's looking at the hours overall at the end of the program. But I would say yes, if you're working with the high school about an event or series of events coming in, then I would consider that a high school collaboration to go for your secondary hours.
Okay, thank you.
Allie?
I'm doing pretty good with my hours. Like Chelsea and a few others have said, I'm a special education teacher, so I'm getting a lot of my hours with IEPs. I'm also the only special education in my building that's been there for a few years. The other 3 are brand new, so I'm not getting paid to mentor, but I'm definitely mentoring kind of off the grid. So I've been counting a lot of those hours where I'm sitting, reviewing their paperwork before they submit it and hold their meetings and coaching them and stuff like that. I'm also a leader on a few different committees in my building, so I think I'm doing just fine with mine so far.
Okay, good deal. We'll take a couple more minutes to check in. Let's see. Callie?
Mine are going good, kind of like everyone else said with the secondary hours. It's more difficult to get those, but I'm doing fine with my elementary hours.
Okay, good deal. Grace, how are you doing?
Mine's going good too. I have over 100 hours, and then my mentor's pretty good about keeping in touch, so I plan to get a lot of those before the school year finishes, and then this summer she'll need help too.
Okay, great. Let's see. Shout out if I haven't called on you yet. You guys have moved around the screen about 4 times. So anyone else that I haven't called on that wants to jump in, Jacob, yeah, go for it.
I'm doing pretty good on my hours, but mine's like shifted. And middle school is hard for me to get into because I do secondary. I do have a question this week. I called up one of my professors. I haven't seen him in 5 years, and he came in and presented a lesson to my honors geometry class. And after that, I collaborated with some of the math teachers and the principal on seeing how we can implement that into our lessons. Would that count at all towards secondary, or because it's kind of like curriculum? And
Yeah, go ahead.
I just didn't know if that would count or not towards, because I know it said something in the paper with like curriculum, changing curriculum binders and stuff like that. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think it all just depends on how the description of how you write up what you're doing. So if you're working on curriculum changes like the research and the materials and piloting and things like that, or if you're working on curriculum materials like physically delivering and carrying out and working on like the purchasing. So it could fall into different categories, or I think you could make it work for that.
So if we bought materials for for like the project or the lesson that he did, that could count towards it to implement it?
If you bought materials for it,
Yeah, I thought that's what you said, something like that. Bought materials for the curriculum.
well, I'm like, if you were a part of the purchasing process. So sometimes when the district is buying new curriculum materials, there's like meetings that you go and review options and you make decisions on which one you're interested in, and then you work through the purchasing process. So that could be, that might be something that fits in more in like maybe managerial. No, I don't want to. It's kind of budget related, but you could still connect that in with instructional leadership. If it's working on the curriculum, like if you just want to keep the big picture of curriculum, then it could fit in there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else want to jump in before we talk about your performance assessment? Okay. I will come back around to the middle school grades question before we end. I'm going to write that down. Okay. So I'll come back around to that. Let's talk about your performance assessment. So when you guys get to the end of your program, you are going to enroll in a course that's EDU 583. It's a course in that you have to register for it, and it will be on your schedule. I think it's like 1 credit hour. It's a regular 8-week term course, but there isn't necessarily like instruction to go with it. The course is the assessment. So the performance assessment is an 8-week process where you are taking your instructional problem and how you provided or created interventions to address that instructional problem. And you are writing to a series of prompts. And that EDU 583 course is the process of writing those responses, getting feedback from a teacher or a mentor who's in charge of that course. And at the end of that 8 weeks, you submit that performance assessment and the series of reflections and artifacts for grading and scoring. Each institution, so William Woods, will score their own performance assessments. They have multiple scores per evaluation, but it's all scored within the program. So a couple of things on that. In the email I sent before about this meeting in particular, I shared an example of what qualifies as an instructional problem. It's a difficult topic to kind of narrow down a specific list of things, because it really depends, just like your hours, on how you clarify the instructional problem. So in the email I sent before, I said student attendance is not an instructional issue. what happens is people who are, like in the past, I had a person who wanted to address student attendance, and their interventions that they wrote about were changing policy on student attendance and how they addressed truancy and frequent student absences and all of that. So nowhere in that discussion was instruction brought into play. However, if that person would have looked at loss of instructional time due to frequent student absences, then it becomes an instructional problem because they're not in the classroom, they're losing instruction time. The interventions would then be like professional development for teachers on high yield instructional strategies. So when the kids are there, how are we teaching to make sure that they are learning to the highest levels possible? So it can be kind of tricky to see attendance as not an instructional issue, but it can be an instructional issue. It really just depends on the lens that you use for that. The other thing is the interventions have to actually happen. So your instructional problem needs to be something that is relevant to you and your school and accessible to you, because you're going to have to go through a series of prompts where you identify what the problem is. You need to have data to support that that is a problem. You will also need to identify what your intervention is, and it can be a series of things. Like it might be a multi-tiered approach to address the issue, but you have to have a plan for what that is. And you have to have evidence of that plan happening. So for example, in the loss of instruction time example that I gave you guys, if that were my topic, I then have to have agendas for professional development meetings, minutes for those meetings, presentation slideshows for those meetings, a roster where my faculty signed in for those meetings. So just be mindful as you're choosing your topic that it needs to be something you can do, because you have to be able to write about it and provide evidence that you did it and what the outcome is. So that all being said, what questions do you guys have, or what topics? Yes, if you have a question, if you have your camera on, if you can just raise your hand. If you don't have your camera on and you can use the reactions and put your emoji hand up, I will chat with each one of you guys. Patricia, go for it.
Okay, so my situation being different than most, I'm planning on having this done at the end of the semester, because I am working on co-teaching instructional strategies for cognitive engagement with my co-teacher and our instructional coach. And one of our building goals has been on cognitive engagement. So can I do that? I mean, like, we're tracking progress. We have a plan. We sit down, we meet once a week. We're implementing strategies. We're looking at the difference in the grades and on the assignments. Those are all things that you're talking about for this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
that should be fine. Have you taken a look at the prompts that I sent with that email a few weeks, or last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago?
Yes. So I printed it out and I was looking at it, and I was going to ask, since it's something that we're working on building wide, we took a survey within our building. Can I use that as evidence that, hey, we don't really do this as much in the classroom?
Absolutely.
We brought in David Holden for 2 days, and we're doing a lot with it. So it's actually in play.
Yes. The only reason I asked about just making sure that you have that handout of what each section is and what you'll be writing about and responding to is just so that before you leave to go to your new position, you have everything with you that you need. Not that people in your current district are going to be like, no, we're not going to share anything with you, but that way you know you have what you need before you go.
Okay, and you're talking about the MPEA performance assessment review, right?
Yes.
Where there's the different steps and it says prompt and artifact and okay.
Yes. Yep.
Yep, I've got that printed out.
Okay, perfect. Anybody else want to throw an idea out there? You're not sure if it's an instructional topic? Jacob, go for it.
So it took me a little while to figure out what I wanted to do. It was probably, I don't know what course it was, but I was asking the professor, and probably went through 5, and she kind of emailed the bigwig and shut them all down. Well, I got one that worked, which is good. So it was with the immediate feedback. It was with my honors geometry kids with the performance events. So I was going to grade them just how like EOC grades them, the performance events, 0 out of 5. Now, when you're talking about artifacts, so when I did my data, the first semester I took all my tests. I picked 1 to 3 problems and I graded each one of them. And I put them on an Excel sheet. I don't need the actual test. Okay, so I just need that Excel sheet.
Right. So like an example would be some people in the past have used MAP scores to show that there's a dip in 6th grade scores, but 5th and 8th grade scores are fine. So obviously we don't have the context of the map, but they just pull that from DESE. So yeah, in the handout, in that email, and when I send this video link, I'll include the handouts again, just so that they're right there. Just be sure, because it will say in there what your artifact should be, and it gives recommendations. So it'll say like data from DESE web apps or spreadsheets of your own in-house data or something like that. Other artifacts might be like articles to explain why immediate feedback is an effective strategy kind of situation. So
okay.
Yeah, just take a look at that packet and it will tell you what kinds of artifacts you will need.
Okay, perfect. So I was thinking, I was like, oh, I don't have all their tests. So, all right, that's awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone else not sure where to go at all with an instructional problem?
You mentioned the MAP test. Can we use a different test, summative test, like we have a test called the iReady test that we use in Springfield. Is that a good one, or is that it has to be like that? Okay.
Yep. So and there's any variety of ways that you can go with that. So with MAP or iReady or Evaluate or anything like that, you could find, dig down into the content and find that there's a specific standard or group of standards or topic or skill that they're not mastering and address that. You could look at grade level data and on those iReady assessments and see if, a grade level that has all 1st, 2nd, 3rd year teachers is scoring lower than a grade level that has veteran teachers or vice versa. So anything that you can connect to an instructional practice is what you're looking for. Yes, Brandy.
So I have a question. So we have been looking at in our admin level meetings, when we've been looking at our professional learning communities and how some of them may not be working properly. And so we've also looked at assessment data that's tagged. I'm in Illinois, so we do the Illinois Science Assessment. And so we looked at one PLC in particular that happens to be the highest failure rate in the entire district. And everyone on that PLC team is new and has not been to the professional learning communities training, right? So that's what I was going to do my project on, is how a efficient PLC can lead to achievement and higher scores and things like that.
Right.
Does that work?
Yes. You are just going to have to make sure that you focus on the instruction that happens as a result of those PLC meetings, not the PLC itself. So what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to connect that data to, your low achievement data shows that there's an instructional problem. Your intervention is PLC training, but I would suggest making it specific to instructional strategies. And when they're in their PLCs, they're planning, collaborating on what instructional strategies they're using in order to get more growth, higher growth, more achievement out of their students following that PLC time. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, that would work. Just don't get in a rabbit hole of the faculty PLC. Think about it as what they're doing and what they're talking about. Anybody else? Okay. All right. What I'm going to do is when I send the link for this video, the handout for the MPEA assessment, and also link handout. There was something else I was going to put in there. I can't remember. I'll send everything along in this email that you guys need access. Oh, that I'm going to ask you guys to reply when I send this email. I want you guys to send me, just me, not the whole group, an email of what your instructional problem is that you're deciding on. And then I can help coach you through whatever you need for that. Once you get into your 583 course, your actual assessment, there's another instructor that's assigned to you. And so the great thing is that that course is meant to provide you feedback. So as long as you are engaging with the instructor and mentor in that 583 term, they'll support you. If there are mistakes, they'll help you. They'll kind of remind you of what's expected in that evaluation or performance assessment. So you will have help even while doing it. But especially for those of you that are going to be trying to get some hours in now, if you have any questions, want to make sure you're on the right track, just feel free to email me and I'm happy to let you guys know. I've scored them before, so I have been down that road and looked at the scoring and know what they're looking for. So, but I will ask in that email when I send the link and then the handouts to just reply to me by the end of the 16 weeks. So by the end of this term, I want to know what your topic is, just to make sure you're on the right track. The other thing, the last couple of things, so I'm going to schedule a meeting in week 15. I think week 15. I'll have to look and see. It might be week 14 because every other week the RPCs have a meeting during this time. But I'm going to schedule a meeting in either week 14 or 14 or 15. And we'll just do one last check-in, how you're feeling in the last couple of weeks. And also that your contact hours log will be due by week 16. And that will just be emailed to me is fine. And then the last thing, which is super exciting, Dr. Logan and Dr. Miller said that since the certification changed to Building Leader K-12, the middle school grades, so what would be considered middle school is grades 6 through 8, you can choose if you want it to be elementary or secondary. So do what works for you guys and put that where you need it. And it's not that you have to say every single thing that you're doing, like it's not a collective, everything 6-8 is secondary or elementary. If you need to kind of divide that in there and use some of the things for those elementary, some are secondary, you just make it work for you. So those middle school grades can go either way. Does that help, Cecil and Diana?
Yes, that's good. Thank you.
Good. Good, good. All right, well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time since you're going to be in class tonight. I'll see some of you when I pop in and say hi. I'll get this video and everything sent out to you guys, and if you have any questions, just let me know. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.